Let's see, it's 12 o'clock. Do we go to standards assessment or do we have lunch getting 12:30? Okay, let's go to standards. Chair Booth.
Thank you, Chair Moss. So I would like to just point out as the first information item, number 2, recognition of progress, achievements, and improvements. We were able to recognize the work of our safety people in the development of the school safety playbook. And I hope it was, of course, provided in backup. It's also online. But I hope you had an opportunity to review that. Chantel and her team have done an excellent job of coming up with 30 pages of great information, well presented, and a real summary of efforts that are being made across the state to increase and enhance school safety for our students. It's excellent material. Then we have some action items. R277325. There are 3 documents that have been incorporated, and we have no more motion for the board on those action items. Action item 6, annual course standards rubric review. As we all know, the rubric review is part of our standards revision process that we have approved, and they have developed a rubric by which it's determined, recommendations are determined as to whether we should revise or leave it the same, or what in terms of those content areas that are coming up for review this particular year. And the rubric review has taken place, and those who have done that review have recommended that we begin the standards revision process for driver's education and for physical education. And so that is the recommendation that the board directs staff to begin standards revision process for driver's education and physical education.
I'm sorry. We have that teed up then? Let's see. Let's see, Member Klein? I didn't miss any lights today. No. Member Klein, did you have a vote?
I'm a no.
You know what? I did not reread the motion. The motion is that the board directs staff to begin the standards revision process. Wait, am I getting? Yeah. Yes, for driver's education and physical education.
Did you get my vote? I'm a no.
I think, no, we didn't. Thank you. Oh, we did. We did get your vote. All right, one more. There we go. That passes 13 yeses, 2 noes, being Member Bogus and Member Klein. Back to you, Chair Booth.
Next, we have action item number 7, revision of child sexual abuse and human trafficking prevention minimum guidelines. And this has gone through quite a bit of work since our committee meeting with emails. We've got an email thread that's about 10 pages long, and I think some of you may be interested in your downtime in reading everything that's gone back and forth, but I'll turn the mic over to Vice Chair Earl to do what she is wanting to do on this particular item.
Vice Chair Earl.
Yeah, there's, I want to make one motion, and I guess they could be divided out. The motion is, Ben, did you have that? No, yes, but it needs to be the first one, unless she sent one just recently, because that one only addressed, it had page numbers for one, not all three. I don't know if that makes sense. Okay, so what this is there's three.
Can I just get a point of clarification?
Yes.
We're moving beyond the committee.
No, it's,
Let's just tie this into what's
recommendation, is that
before the
right?
body, so we make sure we're
Yeah.
we're all looking back up at the right spot.
We're on 5.7.
5.7, so this is I'm just trying,
Revision of child sexual abuse and human trafficking
substitute.
prevention standards, correct?
yes.
Okay.
The draft, there's one draft there that was in committee. Draft 3 reflects the request from committee.
Request from committee.
Yeah, there were,
Obviously, a lot of
The work
email
from committee.
traffic. The draft one then, which is just labeled CSAHT, and then you got 3 topics: adult
Mm-hmm.
serving youth, elementary, and parent guardian. Right? Then you got draft 3. So the first draft was passed out of committee. Draft 3 is a result of communication after committee meeting.
No.
And is now brought before the body. Okay.
no, the draft 3 was the request update from committee.
Okay. So that's coming out of committee then. When you say update from committee, was that
That was
voted
the
upon?
request, that was the motion that we asked for those changes to be made in committee. That was the motion in committee to make those changes. Those are reflective in draft 3.
Okay.
I'm going to make amendments to draft 3's.
Got it. All right. So
Draft
draft 3
3.
was approved by the committee. That was changes directed by and approved
Yeah.
by the committee. And now, okay, gotcha.
Okay,
Take it away.
so the motion is, there's 3 pieces. One, the rubric that it's attached there, I'm asking that the rubric not be attached.
I'm
and
sorry,
that we,
which, is this parent, guardian,
it's
elementary?
all 3.
All 3? So
In
each
section
of them has
1,
a rubric?
In section 1, they have a rubric, and I'm asking that
Okay.
it reference the law, R277630, child sex abuse and human trafficking prevention, training and instruction, and that in the law itself, the rule, which we passed recently, it has a checklist, these things need to be part of the rubric, if that makes sense. So we're just referencing the rule. And then on number 2, it is not best practice to use myths, and I can read why. The research does not show that if you use myths, you actually start reinforcing. I'll read what the research is around it. It's just telling
Do we
people.
have page numbers? I'm sorry. I just want to make sure we can follow along. Is there a page number in here?
I don't know. Do you want me to find it
Sorry.
I think
Well,
it's
I can-
page 10.
I can find it.
Maybe Elise, she
Myth.
had something. I just didn't have a page number. Yes, so it's just asking to remove the myths and just keep the statements there. And the research around this, and Tanya can maybe speak to it more, is that in prevention, telling people that a claim is false can also reinforce the false claim, because people can't always remember whether something was true or not true. They just remember the claim itself. And so you could be reinforcing something that we don't want reinforced. So simply just stating, and it just simplifies, right? State what the truth is, or what the fact is, instead of myth, truth, because it's confusing. In prevention research, they found that that's not the most effective mechanism. So I'm asking we strike the myths.
Can I point members to one of these? I think page 12 in the
Mhm.
first one.
Yeah.
If I opened the one that's titled, which one is that? Parent and Guardian, draft 3, I think is the one that I opened. And on page 12, you have myths and misconceptions followed by facts. Let's see. Let's make sure I'm doing this right.
Yeah.
So our members know what's on the floor
guess I
here.
yeah.
Come on. All right, so the first of the three draft threes, you've got three drafts that are draft one that aren't labeled one in backup. Then you've got three draft threes. The first one is parent, and using that as an example, page 12 includes myths and facts. And so the proposal is to take out the myths and just have the facts, right? All right, I just want to make sure we're following along. There are statements of what is described as a myth throughout.
I want
I
to do
think
that in all three documents.
Yes, that's,
that-
I'm
that's the
asking for that.
proposal, yeah. So using that as an example, or anybody else is free to bring up an example. Page 12 of the first draft three looks like a good one to use. It's got a number of myths and a number of facts. The myths would be removed, and the same thing done for throughout that document and the other two draft three documents.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, Chair, just a question of clarification. So I'm on page 12, number 9. It says myths and misconceptions.
yeah.
Is the proposed motion that we strike, so it would just say misconceptions and facts, or are we striking that whole section 9? Does that make sense?
No, you're not, you would be leaving any of the myths would be taken out. So if it's misconceptions, it would be, am I right, honey?
Would
Okay,
you
give me
change the title then? Is that part of your question, Member
Yeah,
Carey?
it just, yeah,
Okay.
it-
If we're taking out the myths, is it still called myths and misconceptions?
Right.
Oh, yeah, it would need to be.
and then you would just strike myth and it would just say fact.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I don't know if everybody
And they
understood
would,
that, but,
I guess would leave it up to staff members to just make sure it,
okay.
right, the misconceptions comes out right, that's what you're asking.
Yeah.
Right, just make sure, it just needs to be aligned, but we need to remove myths because it's not best practice, so.
Just a similar question, clarification. Would the intro line, would that change? Where
Yeah, it
it
would
says
need to-
myths and misconceptions, is that specifically proposed as something else?
No, I think that removing the myths, you would just, the language would need to reflect what is there. A conforming change.
Okay, we're not gonna vote on what that specific title, or is there just a removal
don't-
of language?
yeah.
Or
I mean, if you want
something in the
to
lead-in
put
or
some language in
title?
there, we could, but I don't think it's necessary. I think staff can, I feel comfortable with that. It's just removing the myths part.
Okay, let's see, did we get a second on this?
Well, not yet, because I've got one more piece. And I
Okay, well,
shouldn't be talking to it, but I,
Well, that's my fault.
Okay.
We're speaking to it. We
Right.
wanted to just clarify what it is, and so if we got it up, then we can see there's a second, and then come back and,
and then the last piece of the motion, so there's three pieces, would be, we have resources that are okay, we have resources, I just want to strike the additional resources. At the very end, you have, okay, I guess I need a second before I can speak to it. Okay, seconded. The resources at the end of each of these documents, first of all, takes them to state resources that are, things you need to know about sex abuse, child sex abuse. It references them to the hotlines that are Utah Human Trafficking Tip Hotline, emergency numbers, Utah Attorney General's Internet Crimes Against Children. But when you get to the additional resources, some of these are secondary resources, like the Trevor Project. These go to a private entity that then routes them back to state resources. What I'm saying is that we don't need the additional resources. You just need to, especially when it comes to abuse and trafficking, go right to the source of where you're going to get the help instead of a secondary source that's going to then route you back. That's what they got to do anyways. And not only that, there's a number of provisions in some of these resources where, I'll give you just a couple of examples. They don't have to adhere to,
Privacy.
the Children's Online Privacy Act. They don't have to, they state that right in their document. They don't have to adhere to that. That's problematic if you've got young children and you're having a child call or you're using it as a reference. The other thing is, let's see, that they on the webpage it indicates the information is incomplete, may be incomplete, inaccurate, or out of date. And I just think in this case, we go right to the source when it comes to abuse or trafficking. So that's why.
Okay, thank you. We have a second, I believe. So I kind of allowed mixing. Anything further in terms of discussion or explanation? of the
No, I just
motion?
think this is,
Sort of cut you off
to me,
there.
this is clear. It's, the rule actually was what's passed, and it has those mechanisms in it. What was the third? And then we're just cleaning it up, so it's, in this area, we want the most accurate information. We don't want any of the extra fluff in there. We want to help kids and teachers and parents to get the resources they need. So, that's what I'd say.
Okay, discussion of the motion. I see Member Norton, I think.
I don't want this to belabor it. I understand what you're saying, and I agree. I would like us to at least look at renaming that Section 9. I think it's a good idea to take those myths out and just state facts, but then I don't think it's a good idea to label that section myths and misconceptions. So I don't know if there's somebody that's got a great idea, but.
Well, I was just thinking that would be conforming. Like, once you take myths out, you no longer say myths and misconceptions, because that's not accurate. So, but we could come up with a name.
You could just drop this sentence and start with this.
Yeah.
You guys just.
Except for it wouldn't be
I don't think we're even
misconceptions at
talking
that
about
point,
this.
because it would be, yeah.
Well, that's why it's probably good to pin this down, because we probably have differences
Tanya,
of
do you have a
opinion
recommendation?
about how that would be carried out.
Sure.
Tanya Albornoz, Coordinator for Prevention. Thank you for the question. Yeah, we would just probably say facts regarding child sex abuse and human trafficking.
Okay, so that's simple.
If in the motion you want to say that you permit staff to make technical changes to make sure that the document makes sense, then we can work on wording that in a way that the board might be okay.
I think my understanding is there's a general sense that misconceptions and myths would not be in that, and instead it would say something to the effect of facts or information regarding blah, 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 right? Am I getting that? I don't want any board member to feel like that was done in a way that didn't preserve their objection, but it sounds like there's, okay. Good.
Okay.
Okay, that's the motion. Discussion of the motion. Seeing no lights, you can vote.
I do have a light.
Remember, oh, I'm sorry, you're behind the,
Well, it's a baby light, so I don't know whether that counts. I feel that with this particular subject area, content area, that as clear, as direct, as accessible as we can make it, without a lot of additional stuff that they have to wade through, or that might be nice to know or interesting, it's better. And so the changes that are being recommended by Vice Chair Earl are going to make for parents, for educators, and for students this information more accessible and more directly. They can just go right to it without wading through all of the rubrics at the beginning, and without going through all of the myths and trying to determine which of all these resources should we contact first. If we've just got the basic ones that they've got to contact and that we have full confidence in, it just allows them to quickly move forward with whatever they're going to do to protect the children that we have the opportunity to protect. So I am supportive. Thank you.
thank you, Member Booth. And I see no other lights, so the motion then is framed up on the board. Member Klein.
Yes, I noticed several times in the document that it says, what they're supposed to teach, but then it says, but not limited to. And so my
Is this to
concern is
the
that
motion
even with,
itself?
yeah, but so with number 3, my concern is that in removing additional resources does not prohibit them from being used. Because of that statement that's throughout the documents, it says, but not limited to. And so unless we make explicit prohibitions, or we put language in that limits what they can teach to only what is in this document, then they can still use those resources.
Okay. Thank you for the comment. Is that a question that somebody would like to answer or rhetorical? I think that probably.
I don't know if anybody has that, but I would move to amend that number 3 to explicitly prohibit those additional resources.
From being used by any teacher?
From being included or used in the teaching or training.
All right, let's see if
I just
an
wanna-
amendment to the amendment would be in order. I want to make sure we've got it accurately stated.
I just want a clarification because I'm looking at the not limited to has to do with the examples, not the resources, but I'm still looking.
But there's no limiting principles in even the instruction and curriculum or parts of it. So I just use that as an example of, the mindset of those that have written this document and those that are likely going to be using it or implementing it, is that unless we put parameters on it and we say they have to stick to these narrow parameters, then there isn't anything that prohibits them from using anything and everything. Just because we wrote down what we would like them to do doesn't mean they can't go above and beyond that.
Vice Chair Earl, did you want to address?
Okay, yeah, I'm just looking, I'm trying to look down all the places where it has, but are not limited to, and it's things like, let me go back, let me find it.
While
But
you're looking.
on those doesn't say that there is no limiting language.
Five again.
I guess I'm not understanding. You're only
So-
limiting on the resources, on these particular resources that aren't
There
actually going to
is
be
nothing-
included in the document.
There isn't anything in the entire document that limits them to sticking with what is explicitly stated in the document.
Yes, I just,
So it's
yep.
it's almost just like a suggestion document because it doesn't say you can go this far and no further.
Member Wood
It's
had a
just that
comment.
they happen to put that language in there in a few spots that alludes to that, but that's the general assumption behind
Who
this. If you
seconded?
want to go outside of it, you can because there is no limiting language.
I don't
Okay,
know. I don't know if
member,
anybody did.
member Wood has a comment. Did we get a second? Hold on, I had a point of order raised in. I'm trying to remember. Member Green does if we didn't already. I thought we did. Okay. Sorry?
Not on this, though. On mine, but not on
Oh, yeah,
the
on
motion.
member Klein's, I don't think we had a second, correct. Is that,
Are you
Member
seconding
Green?
hers? No.
okay, we're waiting to see if we have a second. Let's make sure we had it framed up correctly, that the document prohibit use of the additional resources in implementation of the materials, member
No,
Klein, or of any resources outside the body of this module.
Point of order when you have a minute.
I have
Well,
a
yeah, let me just
question.
make sure we got member Klein's language up here and we can argue about it. Member Klein, do we have
Is that what you're saying?
your language up here
That's-
correctly?
That is correct. That is correct.
Okay.
And that's just scratching the surface. That's as far as my concern with the entirety of the document.
Okay,
But
let's-
yes,
Let's stick to what we've got. The document prohibit use of the additional resources and implementation of the materials is the proposed amendment to member Vice Chair Earl's amendment. Is there a second? I will second it because I want to talk about it. Member Bogus seconds. Member Klein, if you had an opportunity, I think we've discussed it. Anything further before we open it to discussion by the body?
no.
Okay. I see a couple lights. Member Wood first and Member Lear. Yeah.
I just want to clarify, this document is the guidelines that we are setting for those who want to submit curriculum. And then that curriculum comes back to us to approve. Is that correct?
Vice Chair Earl, sorry. Question about the actual role of this document
This
and whether it
document
goes-
sets the guidelines for the curriculum that will come back to us to
Yes,
approve.
that is accurate. And
So
if
we
there-
are setting the basic guidelines, but in this way, we would be saying, you can't go beyond anything that we've said, whether it be evidence-based or whatever. That all comes back to us in the end.
That's accurate.
All right, thank you, Member Woods. Member Carey, let's see, Member Lear, then Member Carey. I lost.
And my question's similar. When I'm looking at, none of this has line numbers, so that makes it a little hard, but I'm looking at number 19, and second paragraph. The materials must include but are not limited to. I'm wondering what Member Klein is wanting to prohibit, that you could read this to say that those who present materials, their materials that are actually presented can't must include certain things. That's great, I'm fine about that. It suggests that they can't even look at other information, which I am not fine about. And so I would like a clarification for what the intent is, although I'm never one who thinks intent is controlling. I'd like the words to be clear. But is the idea that the individuals or groups submitting the training, their materials have to include all of the following? But we're not saying they can't look at or consider, or we're not saying that.
Question to Member Klein, could you answer that regarding the effect? Again, I
Well,
think,
or whoever's wrote this document, I don't know who wrote it.
okay.
My motion is simply that we prohibit the use, that whatever this guidance is, prohibits the use of those additional resources that Jenny is asking to be removed.
So they can't even read them, or they can't include them in their submissions?
They cannot be included in the guidance document that comes back to us, or the resources, the training, whatever. They cannot be used in instruction, curriculum, or implementation.
Okay.
I
Answer the
think I
question,
understand,
Member Lear.
thank you.
All right, Member Carey, I think.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just have, and I think it's addressing the motion by Board Member Klein, but as I'm looking at the additional resources, I guess I'd like to pose a question to staff, if I may, regarding Safe UT. That's listed as an additional resource. I'd just like to say on the School Safety Task Force that Deputy Norman and I both serve on, that particular resource is always identified as being very preventative in terms of some of the struggles that our students have, including suicide. So I don't understand why we're extolling the virtues of this in keeping our schools safe and our students safe on the School Safety Task Force. I don't know why we would list this as an additional resource and not essential in this document. And if I could just pose that to Deputy Norman.
Certainly. Deputy Norman?
Thank you. Patty Norman, Deputy Superintendent of Student Achievement. I appreciate the question because it is something in the School Safety Task Force that has been brought up to really making a difference in students' lives. And so at this point in time, if there's a difference between resources and additional resources, staff may need to make another attempt at that to be able to move some of those that are in additional resources to resources, or vice versa, whatever that might look, if all additional resources are off there. May I add two more comments that are not maybe germane to the question? I wanted Tanya to be able to focus what the purpose of the minimum guidelines document is, where it sits within the rule. There's not a rule that reflects this in this. So materials do have to be vetted, and they do have to meet the minimum guidelines. But this minimum guidelines document doesn't reside or isn't referred to in any rule. So if things need to come up along the way, then the board might consider what that means to you as a board in updating the document for current research that might come up as things go along. But Tanya, if you would, may I have Tanya explain that?
Yeah, I think it's germane because the proposed amendment here is to prohibit use of any of this additional resources and implementation of the materials. So I think what you're talking about, what does that mean, implementation of the materials, right? What process would this apply to? So yeah, thank you.
Tanya Alvarno's coordinator for prevention. So yes, just to clarify, this is the minimum guidelines. So this is a guidance document that we provide to any organization that wants to submit materials. So we're saying these are the things that minimally need to be included in your materials. They can go above and beyond that, and the reason for that is in case a new research comes out, new materials, new resources, things like that. But I do want to clarify that every single set of materials still comes back to the board for review. So we have a process where the review committee reviews it, and then it comes back to the board for approval as well. So any set of materials, every single piece of information and element that's included would come to you for approval. These, again, are just the minimum guidelines.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, I don't see any further lights. The motion then is that the document. Oh.
So I can talk to myself.
Back to you.
Sorry. Thank you, sir. So I am wondering, I guess it's along the same line as Member Wood's question. I am wondering why the removal language does not go far enough. If I may pose that question to the maker of the motion.
Why this language does not go far enough? Oh, you're questioning Member Klein on whether Vice Chair Earls.
Yeah, through the chair, I would ask the
does
maker of
not.
the motion, the removal of the additional resources, considering the pathway this document will take, why is the removal of the language, why does that not go far enough? I don't know, maybe I didn't articulate that well, but that's my question.
Member Klein?
Okay, so just because it's taken off, we've already heard that they can go above and beyond and include whatever they want in their submission to us. What we're saying is that we don't want them to include those things in their submission to us because we will not approve it if they do. That is the point. So if we're putting this out to other groups to then submit to us what we're looking for, we need to tell them what we want and what we don't want. We need to include both in order to be clear in what we're asking them to submit to us.
Vice Chair Earl?
Yeah, and I see what you're saying. The only problem is I think we could probably list maybe another 50 items on here we don't want them to do. That's true. Right? But then I think we're just trying to articulate this is where we want to head and keep this as concise as possible. And because it is coming to the board to review, we'd be able to identify if it goes somewhere south or whatever, where we don't want it to go. I think to try to list all the places we don't want it to go might not be the most effective use of our time, because I could probably give you half a dozen right now of resources I wouldn't want on here, but I don't think that's probably the most effective use of time or effort.
Well, I would argue that to say that we are going to waste more time when they come back with their proposals that we are against, and then we have to say no and send it back to them, and they have to guess again what we will approve or not approve, instead of us just telling them. If there are certain things we know we will not approve, we should include those on here so that they don't waste their time by including them in a document that then they'll have that will be rejected and sent back.
Thank you, Member Klein. Member Green?
I think addressing what Member Klein is saying on the general requirements, number 3, age-appropriate materials. It states, overall, the materials are age-appropriate and comply with the definition of age-appropriate instructional material as defined in Utah Code 53G 9207.
Okay, I looked at that code.
Hang on, Member Klein, let me just direct traffic here. We'll keep it on track, but member,
And if
Green.
I'll just continue with number 4 as well. Prohibited concepts and practices, as in also the same code. And then you've got gives instruction regarding consent as described in Utah Code 765406. And I'm fine to get the feedback that Member Klein was, I think, going to respond with, but I just wanted to put that out for discussion as well, that there are codes built into this that these companies would have to work through, unless I'm not interpreting that correctly, which I think I am.
gotcha.
But go ahead, Member Klein.
Thank you.
Through the
Yeah,
board,
Member Klein?
or through the chair.
Yep, you're on.
So I looked up those codes, and basically age appropriate means whatever the board approves. And the one where it does say that it age appropriate instructional materials that invites a student to share personal experiences about abuse during instruction is not included in the code, like it states in this document.
Actually, go read the code.
I did read the code. That's why I'm saying what I'm saying.
I got the traffic mitts on. I'm guiding traffic here. Hang on. Go ahead, Member Klein.
I didn't, I read the code. I read both codes that are referenced, and it doesn't say what it says in this document that it says.
All right.
The code doesn't.
Could you cite the code? We have a question, Member Klein. Are you able to cite what the code actually does
Yeah,
say
so
in your view?
Number 3 and 4 in this document we're looking at references 53G9207 and 765406, but specifically 53G9207. It doesn't give an explicit, okay, for whatever reason,
That's
okay.
number B.
That's
It's 3B,
different
I believe.
than what I pulled up when I searched it. Okay. If you can scroll back, if you can scroll back up a little bit, age appropriate instructional material, responsibility of adults for the safety of children, how to recognize uncomfortable inner feelings, how to say no to boundaries. Okay, that doesn't, we should probably define what age inappropriate is, because that doesn't really
It doesn't.
define.
We're getting there.
Okay.
Go ahead, Member
See.
Klein. We do have a couple other comments, and we can double back to you. It's an important subject, so we want to make sure we cover it. Just
May I
you want us
respond
to
Member Klein?
have you given us what you'd like in the way of reference to code?
So that's a new change, it looks like, which didn't come up when I searched it.
A new change to code, you're saying?
Yeah, effective
Okay.
July of
Okay. Gotcha. I'm seeing a couple nods. It does sound like that's been a moving target a bit, so there's updated language in the code, which is helpful to know. Anything else to direct us to, Member Klein? We do have a couple folks in line. Can come back to you if you have other comments.
Go ahead.
Okay. Member, let's see. Although
Point of
now I'm not seeing
information.
lights. I'm back to you, Member Green.
Just,
Okay.
I think I'm hoping to help clarify maybe what is being asked. In this, it's at the 53G9207 for those following online. 3B does state that a school district or charter school shall use the instructional materials approved by the state board under subsection 2. So that does imply that comes through the board. That is a step that will happen when, like, we pass this, we're going to get that back. We have the option to approve or deny what would be going out statewide. And then in 4B, again, it states a school district or charter school that provides the instruction described in subsection 4A shall use the instructional materials approved by the state board under subsection 2 to provide the instruction. So we will move this forward, but there's going to be a step 2 that will be required from us. Is that correct? Okay. Anyway, I don't know if
Okay.
that helps.
Very helpful. Yeah. We got moving pieces on code. We got process that's going out, coming back. So very helpful. Appreciate all the questions and answers. Any other lights on this motion, again, we're talking about Member Klein's motion to amend. Is this related to the, let's see. You're live.
So through the chair, sir, I would ask that, does this, if I understand it correctly, it will facilitate an RFP process for materials to come back to us to review? Is that,
Is this an RFP or a review and approval for each of those who submits? I'm seeing nods. So not so much a single winner, but rather anybody who wants to submit and requires our approval.
okay, that's what I wanted clarity on. So maybe that is also a question.
Okay. Any other comments? I see no lights. So the motion then before the body, which is an amendment to Vice Chair Earl's amendment, is that the document prohibit use of the additional resources in implementation of the materials. With that, please vote.
Yes.
Member Klein is a yes. Okay, voting is complete. That fails by a vote of 14 noes and 1 yes, yes being Member Klein. That takes us back to Member Vice Chair Earl's underlying motion, which is framed on the, oh, you have a,
I'd like to make a motion.
okay. So the motion on the floor is Board Member Earl's motion to amend. Member Carey.
Yep. So I'd like to make a motion, and that motion would be that we remove Safe UT from the additional resources list, and that we include it under the prevention resources. And I would defer to or ask USBE staff whether, my preference would be we include it under resources for child sexual abuse and resources for human trafficking, but I would defer to.
So without going to the merits of it, if you could just help us frame where it is that that's intended to go, then we'll see if we have a second, bring it back for discussion.
Again, Tanya Albornoz, Coordinator for Prevention. And just to make a clarification, the reason that it's broken out this way, to clarify, is that it says examples of resources that may be included or referred to. The first list is specific to child sex abuse. The second list is specific to human trafficking. And the third list that says additional resources are general resources that could apply to both. That's why it's broken out that way. And we're happy to organize it in whatever way the board wants us to do.
Member Carey, does that help tee up the motion?
Yeah, then my motion would just be that we remove it from the additional resources list, and we add it under, sorry, I'm trying to find it, prevention resources, under both resources for child sexual abuse and under resources for human trafficking.
Okay, does that tee it up accurately then? And we have may have a second? Okay, I think Member Wood and Member Booth, we got a couple seconds. Any discussion of the motion then?
Again, I would just like to say it's been very illuminating hearing the, I feel bad calling them success stories, but that's what they are. The good that this prevention success stories that this resource is doing. Obviously not perfect, nothing is, but it truly is making a difference. And I think to not make this above the line would be a mistake.
Okay, thank you. Discussion to that motion.
I have a comment.
Member Klein.
Yes, I've researched Safe UT's page, and the previous comment by Board Member Earl saying that the primary sources or those secondary sources refer back to primary sources. If we put Safe UT on as a primary source, Safe UT refers kids to the Trevor Project, which is the secondary source. And that is why I would be opposed to adding Safe UT to just the regular resources list.
Okay. Thank you. I don't see a light, but I see staff might wanting, anybody? I don't know if I see lights or not. Okay. All right. Seeing no further comments, we can vote that the board move Safe UT from the additional resources list to the prevention resources list on the resources for child sexual abuse and human trafficking from member Carey as an amendment to Vice Chair Earl's underlying motion to amend. Please vote.
No.
Member Klein's a no. Thank you. Okay, voting is complete. That motion passes by a vote of 9-6. The noes being Vice Chair Earl, Member Klein, Member Green, Member Lear, Member Reel, and Member Bogus. Thank you. That brings us back now to Vice Chair Earl's underlying motion. Seeing no lights, I will read the motion prior to voting. Motion is that the board make the following revisions to the CSAHT Parent Guardian Elementary Student and Adult Serving Youth Minimum Guidelines for Child Sexual Abuse and Human Trafficking Prevention Materials, Documents Draft 3. In Section 1, add R277-630, Child Sex Abuse and Human Trafficking Prevention Training and Instruction, instead of Instructional Materials Review, Generic Rubric. 2, remove the, quote, myths from the document, example, pages 12, 18, and 19 of the Parent Guardian document. 3, remove the additional resources, example, the additional, quote, additional resources and accompanying 7 bullet points from page 2 of the Parent Guardian document. Seeing no further lights, please, oh, I'm sorry, Member Straight.
Thank you. I would like to divide the question.
Okay, is there a proposed division first, and then we can speak to it?
Just remove number 3. Not remove, but to separate, sorry.
Separate item 3 from
The rest
items
of
number
the-
1 and 2.
yeah.
Okay, is there a second? Member Lear, you would like to speak to the motion? Motion is to divide number 3 from 1 and 2.
Yeah, I get 1 and 2. My challenge with number 3 is I don't feel like that those additional resources, that there might be something else that we're missing that should be there. I agree with the Safe UT. I agree with that resource. But I'm not sure I completely know whether any of those other resources are inappropriate or wrong. Maybe we should do the same thing as with Safe Utah. But anyway, and of course I have some experience with that. But I'm just unsure of my support for number 3.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to divide? If not, the motion is then that we would divide item 3 from items 1 and 2 for consideration by the board. Please vote. Member
Abstain.
Klein? Member Klein abstains. Okay, that motion, voting is complete. Motion passes 10 affirmative, 1 abstaining, Member Klein, and 4 noes being Vice Chair Earl, Member Hymas, Member Bogus, and Member Green. Okay, so the motion from Vice Chair Earl has been divided. There's 1 and 2, and there's 3. And I've usually sought a further motion to tee any of the separated items up for a vote, but I'm not entirely sure still if that's necessary. Should I just proceed to tee up 1, or do I wait for? Oh, hold up.
You usually vote yes. I want to make sure.
are totally correct. In fact, I joked with Tyler about it. Okay, that's the first time I've ever done that. Just wanted to make sure it's right. I appreciate it, and I appreciate your
All right, so it has been divided, and I'm hearing that we could either ask for a motion from the body to tee up 1 and 2 and then 3, or I can just go through them in order. So I'll just start at the top then, seeing no lights. Let's put before the body numbers 1 and 2. The motion then is that we, we've read them before. Items 1 and 2 are before the body. Please vote. Member Klein?
I will say yes, but I also say it doesn't go far enough.
Okay. And that passes unanimously. Thank you. So we will proceed to number 3, which is to remove the additional resources. Example, the quote, additional resources and accompanying 7 bullet points from page 25 of the parent guardian document as amended by Member Carey's removal of the Safe UT app resource from that section and placed elsewhere. So this would remove what is left in those additional resources. Any further discussion of that motion? Okay, please
I
vote.
do, I do.
Sorry,
Sorry.
Mr. Earl. Sorry.
I do. I just feels pretty strongly these should not be included. You're talking about poison control. You're talking about the Trevor project, and some other items there. The point here is to get right to the resources that you do need. So I would strongly encourage us to vote. What do we vote for? Right? Are we just making sure it didn't get added? Right? We're just voting either for or against 3. Right? That's what.
Correct. It
Okay.
would be for removal.
Yep. That's
of-
what I would. Yep. I want them removed so that we're going right to the resources kids need instead of secondary.
But we've got a note from Deputy Superintendent Norman. Did you have a point of order first, though? Come on back if you'd like. We'll see what Deputy Norman has.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Superintendent Norman. I just wanted to make sure that number 3 reflected. So Board Member Carey's motion passed, which would be having Safe UT come up in the list. But then that says the 7 bullets, accompanying 7 bullets. If you remove that from the list, it's now only the 6 bullets. And I just want to make sure that
Thank you.
that is.
Actually, I want a clarification on that motion in the first place. It shouldn't necessarily say 7 bullets because each one of those 3 entities has a different bullet. Does that make sense? Different numbers. So it should just be,
Accompanying bullet points.
yeah, additional resources.
From
And
each
so-
document,
yeah.
not just the parent guardian document, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
So with that, then it just might need to say accompanying the addition, not including Safe UT or something along those lines.
Okay, remove the additional resource, example, the quote, additional resources and accompanying bullet points from each document with the exception of the Safe UT app, which frankly is no longer there, but just for clarity.
Yeah, well,
We're
we
not-
moved
we're
it
not
up, so
taking-
it's not necessary to do that.
Correct, but just to be clear. Right, Member Straight and Member Booth.
So, I guess, is the way that the amendment's written, does it maintain Safe UT if you vote no? That's already passed, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Safe UT has been preserved by moving it up in the document, regardless of how we vote on what's left in additional resources.
Okay, I just want to make certain I didn't mess things up there. So my only contention is that perhaps some of those other things should be, or all of them should be maintained as well.
So, okay. So that'd be an argument. Well, I won't characterize your argument. That's not an amendment. It's speaking to the motion, right? Okay, Member Carey. I'm sorry, yeah, Member Booth.
And, okay, just a point of clarification. I just want to make sure that my understanding is accurate. There's nothing currently in this document or in the motion that prohibits any LEA from using additional resources as they see fit and best suited for their students. Is that correct? By removing this
there-
additional resources, we're not precluding any LEA from using any resource that they feel is a.
This may go to what Member Green pointed out, but Tanya, would you like to address that? Thank you for coming up.
Tanya Albornoz, Coordinator for Prevention. Again, this is just saying these are examples of resources that they can use when putting together their materials for this. It's not
Okay.
LEAs, it's the organizations themselves that are submitting material. So by removing those additional resources, all you're doing is just not providing a list of additional resources that they can use in their materials.
All right, okay. All of which would
Correct.
come to us for approval. So the code that Member Green referenced said the board has to approve. And the process you've described is, given that Member Klein's amendment failed, they are not precluded from using stuff outside of this, but we would have to review per code before that went anywhere.
That's correct.
Okay.
May I?
Correct, yeah, but just to clarify the process, there are a lot of moving pieces. So that, Member Klein's motion did not preclude them from going elsewhere, but the code requires us to review before there's any approval. And if this passes, we would not include as suggestions those additional resources, with the exception of Safe UT, which has been brought up in the document outside of additional resources. Okay. Lights over here,
May
Member
I?
Lear? Yeah, we'll come back, Member Klein. I got Member Lear. Let's see.
So I'm just,
Oh, yeah.
in terms of supporting not removing the additional resources, I don't know why we would not provide information to companies, businesses, vendors, whomever are applying for this or submitting their materials. I don't know why we would, and they're all adults, why we would not give them some suggestions or information, and then they can choose 100 others. It just seems micromanaging to me when we've got professionals who are deciding what they want to submit. They can consider whether the board would approve certain things versus other things, but that's an adult decision. So I don't know why we wouldn't provide as many resources as we could, whether they're suggestions or just leave it wide open. I think it sounds rather controlling to say, we're not going to tell you, not going to give you any ideas.
Okay, thank you. So, yeah, this motion would remove suggestions, but given the vote on Member Klein's motion, they would be free to consider other resources, which we would then have to screen and approve, right? Am I in line here? I think I had Member Bogus and then you. And we have Member Klein in line too. Member Bogus?
So I think you just said what I was going to say, is that we can prohibit the use of other resources at a later time.
We can deny that. If they bring
Yeah,
something,
we can deny
we
those
say no.
resources at a future time.
Right.
Right now, we're just removing the bullet points.
Right, the suggestions. Okay, Member Klein, and then Member Vice Chair Hart.
Okay, so I was going to say that based on what the interaction with Board Member Carey, it sounded like you were saying it will come back to us and we have to approve. But just because we approve also does not limit and prohibit them from using other things when it goes to the field.
Well,
Our
I think
approval does
the
not
code does. Oh, go ahead, Member Klein. I apologize.
Our approval does not prohibit. And so now you just told Christina that we would deny. Can we deny? Will we prohibit? Or is our job only to approve what they bring to us? Because if our job is only to approve, then that doesn't prohibit anything.
Let me
And
get,
that's my point with this entire thing.
okay. The code section that I think Member Green pointed us to earlier, somebody feel free to correct me, says that you can only use what the board approves, right? So that's the limitation. It's in code. They must bring it through this process. Remember, we have not prohibited them from looking elsewhere, but it does have to come to us, and the code says if we don't approve it in that process, they cannot use it. Am I getting that right? I'm seeing some nods. Okay, so that's the check. I think that's a very important question. It's being
Okay,
framed up.
so we can say,
If
we could say
no,
in the
that's-
document.
That's no. Go ahead.
So we should say it in the document that anything inappropriate, age inappropriate will be prohibited based on our approval. I just think it's,
Okay.
to get into clarifying language is important. And I just want to add one quick thing and then I'll let it go. But for the record, on the Safe UT app or their social media, they have a post that specifically for Trevor Project says the Trevor Project is the leading national organization providing crisis intervention and suicide prevention services to LGBTQ youth. If you or someone else you needs help, and then it gives them their hotline number, Trevor Saving Young LGBTQ Lives. So Safe UT is directly tied to the Trevor Project.
All right, thank you. Vice Chair Hart.
So I don't, we've run into problems, LEAs have run into problems when they name curriculum and then, or curricula, and then things change about that curriculum. And then it looks like you've, sort of approved it to be used. I just don't think we should be in the business of naming curriculum or programs that are already developed that we may be okay with right now, we might not be okay with after revisions. I just think it's, to the point, I think it's, these are professionals. We don't need to manage the process. We need to manage what they bring to us. And so take out and don't open a door that we might not want open, a month from now. Like, I think taking them out actually provides, it allows it to be, less confusing, because they could theoretically use the suggested, or however they were worded, materials, and then it gets to us and we say, no, we don't like that. And they're like, well, we used the materials that y'all recommended or had on your list. I just don't think we need to even worry about that. We need to worry about what comes to us and worry about it then. I just think we're overcomplicating it, once again, putting excess into rule that doesn't need to be there. It confuses, it doesn't clarify. So that's my piece.
This is not a rule.
Okay, thank you, and we've had some great discussion. Vice Chair Earl, and then let's tee this up for a vote.
Board Member Klein, if you can send that reference, because we had someone reach out to Safe Utah that stated they do not partner with the Trevor Project or use it as a resource, but if you have evidence that is the case, I'm just asking that you.
It's right on their social. I've found many places.
Okay, would you mind if you could find the actual reference and just email it, then we can follow through, because I'll follow up on that, so.
Okay, let us take a vote. The motion before the body is Part 3, having passed Parts 1 and 2, to remove the additional resources, example, additional resources and accompanying, I think we just need to tweak this per the prior discussion, and accompanying bullet points.
Needs to be additional resources.
Yeah, from each document. I think that's probably clear. Each of the 3 documents, perhaps. And I don't know that we need to reference that Safe UT is already gone. Are we clear that? Sorry?
It's in 2020.
Okay. So removing the additional resources page from each of the 3 documents. Something like that. There you go. Perfect. Perfect, okay. Everybody got the language up there?
Is it necessary to say with the exception of safety or no?
No, because it's already out of that list.
It's clear that that won't
Sorry,
affect it, okay.
Was that aggressive? Sorry.
All right. Okay, please vote.
Yes.
Member Klein, yes.
But it,
Okay, that voting is complete. Motion passes 11-4. The no votes being Member Reel, Member Norton, Member Lear, and Member Straight. Thank you very much. Let's see. That then brings us back to the underlying motion, which is that the board approves the minimum guidelines for child sexual abuse and human prevention materials as amended. Any further discussion to the underlying motion? Seeing none, please vote. I think it's just
I'm a no.
this table. Member Klein is a no? Okay. Uno mas. Yep, there we are. That motion passes 13-2. The no votes being Member Bogus and Member Klein. Okay, I think that resolves that item. Back to you, Chair Booth.
Thank you. Then we have 3 information items, and they are humdingers. So I hope you've taken the time to read and be up to speed on what's happening with our P12 mathematics standards revision, the update on that. Our AI and education information item lets us know that we are really moving forward in aggressive and positive ways with AI and have just conducted summits. Matt has done a great job with summits all over the state and then bringing groups of people here on a virtual summit. Also in October, it's been a very busy month. And then item number 10, the English Language Arts Standards Update. This is being brought back at the request of Vice Chair Earl to look and Member Green to look at the grammar, implementation of grammar skills in what we approved last year. And I would recommend that you look carefully at the backup that is provided in the English Language Arts, especially the final document. There's about, 15 or 20 documents there that list all of the guidelines for every grade level in English Language Arts. But the very last document has to do with grammar, and it's written by a BYU professor and outlines some of the approaches that she takes as she's teaching and preparing teachers for the public schools and why she does that. And I think that's relevant to the upcoming meetings where we're going to be discussing a book, The Writing Revolution 2.0, and looking forward to those ongoing discussions. That will be everything. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair Booth, and thank you for the recommendation. Lots going on to review in the backup, so appreciate that. Let's take lunch. We will then be moving into executive session. I think we need to put that after lunch, right?
Or during lunch?
Well, you want to... Everybody okay with that? We'll eat lunch during executive? Okay. All right, I need a motion then. Sorry?
No.
Objections? No? Yes, no?
Break and then into lunch in here? Okay.
We're
The-
moving pretty good. We got through our committees.
Can I just say one thing?
Please.
The only thing to consider is that some people may want to be reading the materials. And if they're reading materials, we need to be doing that in executive, if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
But if
so
people
we
don't
could
want-
we could take 2025 for lunch and bring lunch into
Okay.
executive if we want, right? Does that work? We do lunch for 25 minutes and then if you're still eating, bring it on into executive. Okay, so let's meet back at 1:30 promptly. If we're not done with lunch, we'll continue that in executive, but we will make the motion, go into executive at 1:30.